So I'm going to be planning out a painting from creating a sketch composition to starting with the earlier layers and talking about how to add in forms that are outside of my sketch composition. I lately have been working on not crowding my image, meaning that the edges that I have exposed from this paper here are going to be partially taped off, and so anything that would be outside of this light paper that I have shouldn't be an essential part of my composition. All the action needs to be taking place inside. So I suggest either having a paper the same exact size and then making a frame so that you have a slightly smaller image, or doing what I'm doing and just lining it up and having myself exclude the very outer edge from my design, because I feel like, well, that outer edge is mostly taped off anyway, so only about half of this outer edge would even be visible. The frame would probably sit about halfway through. So let's see. So now I have my surface for designing, and I'm going to be using, light color. This one happens to be a non-photo blue pencil, but I think a light colored pencil can help you get a design going. I know I'm going to be doing an 8x10. I'm not sure if I'm going to use these yet or not, but sometimes it's nice to have those ready cut papers. Those were hot press, and I think I might jump into my cold press papers. So I'm just drawing some quick lines, splitting the image into thirds. Looks like I have been a little overzealous, a little small on that first third. Somewhere around here. And of course you can certainly measure. I just don't always. Yeah, rule of thirds has been used by photographers and long before by painters to break up your image and in a satisfying visual way. So lining things up to go with the lines of the rule of thirds is like horizon lines. You can kind of split your painting into like background, foreground, foreground down here, have some background that extends up here so that it's like 1/3 and 2/3, or 1/3 and 2/3 can be a nice way to do it. You also can use the intersection points as a focus for an object. That works much better visually than putting something in the center. If you are putting something in the center, then oftentimes there's not anything else in the image. But if you're trying to put background and an image in, it's nice to have both. And even if you center an image, oftentimes it would be like you center an animal and the eye would be in one of these, right? So it has to do with our eye moving around to explore an image, and you don't want to just be static in the middle. And I find that photography resources do a nice job of talking about this. And you can also, if you have, most modern cameras will put a grid on your camera shooting lens for you, or like on your iPhone, you'll actually have a setting where you can make a grid so that every time you shoot, you can be thinking about rule of thirds. And I've done that on my camera, and I find it very helpful, especially when I'm gathering resource images, to use rule of thirds. That's really helpful. So there are a lot of ways to get inspiration, but I have recently been enjoying this idea of, well, the world is very monotone outside. It's actually snowing again. And so I'm thinking I would like to do something that's very sort of soft, foggy trees in the distance, with maybe some mounds of snow in the foreground, but I have been doing a series lately where I'm in the inside looking out. So I put sort of the warm inside tones in the lower part of the picture, and then it's the outside fogginess that we're experiencing while we're inside drinking tea, that sort of thing. So I think I'm going to put a nice big coffee cup right here. What kind of coffee or teacup? Actually, mine have a squarish look to them. And I can remember that I have that breathing room around here. So even though this feels kind of close to the bottom, I do have that breathing room. And I want to center this big coffee cup on close to the rule of thirds, but I'm actually going to have some kind of a pattern, I think. I really like some of the blue and white delft kind of patterns, so I might even sketch that out a bit before I really get going on this. So you of course, if sometimes I actually sit and draw my piece out this way and then get to it and start painting. A lot of times I will sketch out an object like this in a few times and get it on a spare piece of paper and get it so it's looking really good, nice and even. The bones of your work are, you know, the bones of your work are gonna stay, the bones of that sketch. So when you think about making a nice painting that is the way you want, if there's an area that's going to be really detailed, that area needs to be planned out. So taking a look at this coffee cup, I'm going to flip it upside down and see how it is. This edge right over here. I'm going to come back in with this and select the lines I really want. But for right now, I'm going to leave it. And before I go any farther, I am going to do a little planning down here. So I said the still life, that was going to be a warm feel. And I don't know anything else about it yet, but I know for the background, my brain was saying I really wanted to do something that was very monochrome. Foggy. And I'm going to write the word grays, but I'm going to write the word warm. Just looking outside right now, it's kind of inspiring me to do something with really kind of clean, warm colors inside, and then outside it's going to be very like muted and foggy. So that's what I'm going to do. And let's see. So I think about 2/3 of the top is going to be landscape outside, like we're looking out a window at a table, and about the bottom third is going to be the inside table. And I've done some flat tables lately, so I think I'm going to do a rounded table. So I'm just going to get I want my leading line to go toward my coffee cup. So leading lines are another thing you can use when you're working. So this table, it's going to be a big one, so it's not going to be a hard angle. Let's see, that is still going to be a little too, for a big table, the curve would still be a little bit too harsh, even though it's a big round. Okay, so it'll help me see that once I ink it out. But let's say, so there's that, and let's say the ledge, I don't want to be cutting up right by the handle. That would be a disaster. But let's try to have a little bit of the outside world peeking underneath that handle. And we'll imagine like this is a wall, right? I'm not going to do any mountains or mullions in this one. It's going to all be, I think, no, I don't want to. I'm going to make it just a blank scene like you're looking through a regular plate glass window. So this is going to be wall color all behind here, or kind of probably brown like it is the edge of the window. If you had a white one or a brown one, wooden edge, that will kind of determine the color. But I said warm inside, so it's probably going to be a warm brown. And then, I don't know, I'm looking outside of my window, kind of thinking just for designing's sake, I think I'm gonna do, it might be a little high, but I can only see, even though there's a hillside there, I can only see this first line of trees. There's other trees obscuring these trees that I'm drawing right this second, but these trees are going to be bigger, and then you've got some smaller trees going up, but they're all going to be kind of muted with a foggy background, and I might be able to handle some steam coming up from the coffee cup. And I wonder if I want to second anything in this picture. Let's see, maybe I was liking that curve. Maybe if I had a plate in here, I don't know if I like that, but anyway, this is a sort of idea. You could sketch out a bunch of these. See, this is the angle that coffee cup's at. And if I want to get a plate going, I would really need to have that kind of an angle. So I'm going down below the composition to get this in. And again, if you wanted to, you could. Okay, and one thing I have to remember, if you wanted to, you could sketch this out, you know, obviously, on a different piece of paper multiple times. And the one thing I have to remember is that, you know, this is my line. So do I actually want that up in there? Well, let's roll with it. Okay, so now that I have done that, I know for sure that I'm going to need to see this line. And I want the edge to be kind of falling off. So a line here will help. Kind of giving this cup volume while I'm doing this. Make that nice and straight. Try to catch nice and straight. Okay, that about right. It's a little pointy right there. Okay, and then get this. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be tracing there, because this is a solid coffee cup. And then I think what I'm going to do, just to help guide myself on the pattern, is I'm going to do just a couple tiny little dashes here, because I think I want my main, you know, pattern going to be in that section for this mug. So I might do just a few little indications when I transfer it with graphite. Then I had this straight line headed across here. Actually, right there. And then I've got the table line. And I think I decided to go with the most, I'm going to go right through here so that connects. Not that I will trace that, but I think that's helpful. And I might even go all the way through. Let's see this. I should have done that to start with. Yeah, see that? We want to make sure those two lines meet up. So I think what I'll do is come here. I should have done that with the blue, but anyway, there it is. Okay, and then I am not actually even going to worry about this, because all of this is going to be formed with wet into wet. I'm just keeping it so that I remember what I'm doing. And I think I will go ahead and come in here with this plate. Okay, and All right, that's it. That's my simple composition. And the plate is going to have design also. So, and I think of something like that. So let's see, if we were doing a plate, if we were looking at it, it would actually be smaller, right? So again, these are the kind of things that we have to work out. I will take a look at my plate. I'll have to get a sample plate up here. But I can use something like this. Let's see. If I look at this, if this is a plate, let's look at this side. My board is at a tilt, so it doesn't help. I can see a little bit of the underside. Yep, so I'm gonna go like this, kind of pinch it, and then go that way, because this edge gets really small when it comes toward you, because you are seeing the part that's underneath it. So again, it's totally worth taking the time to sketch out things like this on another piece of paper, but we're focusing on the watercolor right now. I'm doing this for watercolor purposes. All right, so something like that, and that goes off the edge, and then there'll be a design coming through there. All right, so now that we have our image, we need a piece of paper, and I think I'm actually going to switch to, I'm using these quick because it's going to work out just fine. This is Strathmore. It's ready cut 8x10. And this one is cold press. I had hot press in my hand a minute ago, but we're going to go with the cold press. And then I need something, a board of some type to tape to. So, you need a board to tape to, and I need my graphite to do my transfer. So, my graphite sheet. All right, so I've got that lined up, and I need to tape that down. Now we remember that this is kind of thick, but it's what I have right now. My others are downstairs. Remember what we had in early on when we designed our sketch, that our paper that we sketched on was actually going to be outside of the lines of the actual 8x10 paper that we knew we were going to create. 8x10 is one of the standard sizes, so easy-ish to find, pretty easy to find a frame for an 8x10 without paying a lot of money to get your piece framed at a framing store. Framing stores are lovely. They do a great job, but it's nice to know that you could put it in frame, think about it, have it on your wall, and then get it framed when you know what you want. It's nice, I think, just like sometimes hanging a picture on your wall. Sometimes it's nice to wait until you know exactly what you want. So I think the thing that this gives me too is it gives me the ability, because it's outside the edges a bit, I think I actually want to bring this down. And I think it's partially because that'll be a little bit more true to the center of the intersection being a little bit down here. So I don't want extra white underneath this plate. I don't want to bring this plate down and have an awkward plate. I could either bring it up and have the whole plate, or I could bring it down and have the plate go off the edge. And what that does is gives me a tiny little bit of more sky. That's it. So I think that's what my preference is. Now, before I settle that in there, I need to grab, actually I can tape this down and then I'll stick my graphite paper underneath. So make sure that that's there. I'm trying not to get any tape on my actual painting. There we are. And now I need my graphite paper. Here we go, graphite paper. There you are. Okay, so I have a big sheet of graphite paper that I used I used this multiple times, and I used, where did it go? I was going to show you the little nubbin that I have. Where did it go? My nubbin has disappeared. Maybe it's on the table somewhere. I don't know. Well, I have a little nubbin of graphite that is, instead of just a graphite pencil, it's a chunk of graphite. Well, that's interesting. We'll have to keep our eyes out for that. Okay, so I don't need anything above here. I don't need any of the cross lines. The only things I need are the black lines. The other ones are just for reference. And I'm going to try not to put my hand onto the paper. So, let's see. Okay, so where is my edge here? Somewhere around here. That's my line of where my edge is. So that's how far I can go easily. So I'm going to come in here with a brown colored pencil and just lightly kind of trace into it. You can see it puts a light line on the paper, and I went even too light on the second half. So I just want to have a light line. If you pick a ballpoint pen or something that has more pressure, more directed pressure to a point, then you can actually get indents on your paper, and you certainly do not want indents. So you want to push firmly enough so that it transfers, but not so firmly that it's dark or wrecks the paper in any way. And I'm trying to round off and kind of think about what this is going to look like, and sort of fixing any little, if there's a little line inconsistency. You know, sometimes I'm doing a couple swipes. I just want to get a fairly even line without building up too much graphite. Okay. I have to remind myself, right? We're not going through, making that a little thicker at the bottom. I feel like it needs to be thicker there. So reminding myself we're going through, this is the one. And then this is the one. And here. And here. And that should be it. So let's check. Yeah, so a couple spots missing, and that's fine. I think what I might do is just come right through here and just in a few spots, like these are the bases of these big trees, right? And then this is kind of like, this is the base of the curve up, and the highest the trees come up. And you notice I'm not putting dots on the top of where the trees go. I don't want graphite there, but I could probably get away with a little tiny bit in the lower edge, and you can barely even see it. But it's just a little bit of a guide that can help me get that nice curve, keep that nice curve rather, because we tend to flatten out things. So I'm gonna put this up on my ceiling so that I can see it, as I have an attic studio with a low ceiling, so I've discovered that I can stick it up on my ceiling and still see it. All right, so when we're looking at colors now, we said, looking at my picture, background, monochrome, foggy grays, but we still wanted it to be warm-ish. Not too warm. I'm just looking outside right now, thinking about how I can get that color. It's going to be light, and I want to do some wet into wet to get that color. So a color test at this point would be a great idea. Do I have any scraps of paper? I do. So I want to make sure I don't get splotches on my picture. So I think the picture has to go all the way over somewhere else. It's nice to have a secondary place to put something flat, especially if you work on, like I do, I work on multiple pictures at once. So let's see, I might even want a bit more. But all right, so what I'd like to do for this one, I'm going to want something that is, I'm going to use a size 4 right now because I'm not mixing up a lot of paint at once. I know that there's a little bit of dirt on some places on my piece, but if I think about something like this, with this royal blue that's been muddied a bit, nice light color. Ooh, look at the mud of my water. I have a little bit muddy water right now. Is that enough? Just royal blue muddied down with my muddy water. See, look at my muddy water. Muddy water. Sometimes I even will save muddy water, just one jar at a time, I promise. Because it can be really helpful. Well, that can give me my lightest value, but the problem is that I won't be able to do the slightly darker value, which is the trees, because it's this scenario that's happening that I'm really interested in, is that where you have that trees that are a couple stages darker that are going to be just sort of popping out of the fog. So even though my water gives me this good color, I'm going to have to figure out how to recreate that. So let me look at what I have here. I do have a well that doesn't have a lot. Am I centered? Yeah, I have a well in here. It doesn't have too much brown in it. And this is a mix from another piece that I don't need anymore. It's kind of on the list to be cleaned up. But maybe I can use this brown and let's see. It's going to go green, I think, at first. Well, greeny gray. That's right. Okay. So I'm pretty sure this is this color, which is, where's my card? Yep, raw sienna. So that brown was raw sienna. And then let's see how that is next to this. I think it's a little bit gray still. And what I noticed is that it really, I was surprised at how gray it went instead of green. It's one of those mixes I haven't played too much with yet. But let's see how it is when you give it a little more blue. It's quite nice. I'm going to compare it to the outside environment here. It looks nice. It looks nice. So now we know just by doing, I'm going to get where's my little book? Because the one thing about going and teaching classes is that suddenly everything is not in its normal home. when they're not in your normal home, you can't find them. Let me see. I might have done that in my recent mixing. Let me see. Did I do raw sienna with... You know, I never did. So that's probably part of why I didn't know that one. So raw sienna and royal blue gives you this color. And take a pen. Oh, it's not raw sienna. What did I say? I said raw sienna. Burnt sienna, I think. Here, let me look. Pretty sure. We just looked. Let's look again. Oh, I said raw sienna. Oh, huh. All right. Well, different. I didn't do raw sienna on the other color test either, I can see. So, hey, this might be a good one. And royal blue. Now, I've done these on my big color tests, but I'm at the stage where I'm wanting to do these littler color tests that have multiple options, like for grays and things all together, because you can see in here, you know, this has helped you pick what you want to mix up by, you know, having this color test out. You'll be able to say, hey, that's what I might want. So I think the other thing I could do, now that there is a even though since there's still a space in my book, is I'm going to come in here and say, you know, I would like to put raw sienna in and see what it does. Oops. I would like to put raw sienna and see what it does with all of these. We're going into February now, so I'm adding February. I've been doing this lately. Just add in what you want. Royal blue. And I am not going to do this right this second, but I am going to add it in so that I remember that the next time I get a chance, I already added in green gold. I want to do all of these with green gold, and now I want to add in raw sienna. And that'll give me a few more mixes to play with. Find another spot for that. Okay. So now I think I am going to go with this one. I will have to mix up more of this though, because that is not enough. Not enough, not nearly enough for our purposes. So I'm just going to load this in here, and I'm doing it on the edge so I don't have to rinse off my brush every time. Just trying to get as much of that in there. All right, wash off my brush and then see if I can get, let's see, this raw sienna. It's going to take a minute to turn this. I can use the other side to put the raw sienna in, and let's see what that much does. Now remember, this is much higher concentration, not as watery as what we were using, but we know this is the color we want, so I can put a block down because I want to have slightly darker for trees, and I'm not sure how much water I want yet. Something like that. Okay. You can also put that in the book. This, it's okay with me that this is still tacky. So let's see. Where can I put? Don't have enough room there. I have an empty page in the beginning. Okay. So I can put a blob of this there, nice and dark. Now one thing I might consider, there might be some places that I could stick this more intense version of the fog color in the foreground. Would this make a lovely tablecloth color with like a white design or light snowflakes or something? I think I have a tablecloth like that. Or Or that could be, you could mix this with a little more bright blue, and that could actually be the color of the patterning. If I decide I'm going to do a blue navy pattern on my coffee cup, that could be a really lovely stormy coffee cup color. All right, well, let's see. Let's put a little more water in here. Let's see where we're at. Okay, so it pretty quickly toned it down there. What a nice stone blue. Now, I know I said I was thinking about making the outside a bit warm, but I just like this color too much. This is it. This is what I want to do. So, I set this down. I'm going to grab my... So here we are. I'm going to start. I'm actually going to put my palette away for a minute. And I'm going to start with this color. I've been using this size 4 brush, but now I'm going to come in with a little bigger. This is a... What size of this one? This is an 8. Come in with my fresh water. And I have handy, my fresh water does have a little bit of color to it, but that's okay. It's not enough that it's gonna seriously alter the color, and it might make it easier for you to see on the video. Now, I do have paper towels handy because I'm gonna wanna blot out an area for steam. But first of all, I'm just coming in and I'm going straight up to that line. I know that all these things down here are gonna, with the exception of the coffee cup, are likely gonna have some darkness to them. I want to make sure that, I have to stop talking for a second. There we go. I want to make sure that I lay this background in first because it requires wet into wet, and I just think that going ahead and getting that tree line right in the fog to start with is a good way to start. Plus, you see how I'm wetting everything. If this was all painted and you were trying to wet all the way up to those edges, then you would be, in danger of it seeping out. And because this background won't have a strong color, it won't be loaded with pigment that might possibly want to jump out into areas. Like if you wet this, it's better to go light to dark. That's generally speaking, we go light to dark. So since this background is light and foggy, it's better to work on the background first. If the background was dark evergreen trees behind the coffee cup, I would paint the coffee cup first. I would have to save this area until last if I wanted to do steam, because I would have to paint the forest and then do the steam by blotting it, and then with paper towel, and then I would have to come in and finish this part. But it's basically whatever is lightest, that's what you address first. Let's come in. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now, I'm going to pull just a tiny little bit off to the side of this, and I think I'm actually going to switch brushes. When it's foggy, there's really not much definition. Not much definition happening, so I just want to lay in this nice light color. And I didn't really map out the trees, but the trees are really what's going to define this background. So I'm just coming in and laying some color. And I think with the trees, you can see my dots just barely. Okay, so I had like a bigger one here and a bigger one here and a smaller one, and then it just got into smaller ones making their way up the hill. Kind of pull this down because this is all just going to go, you know, misty, foggy background. I don't want to have a lot of lines, so I'm just coming across here. Okay, now I'm going to lose my chance if I don't go fast, so I'm going to stop talking and just paint for a minute. Now what you'll notice about this is that that was not easy. It's a fairly large space to paint wet into wet by trying to hold the details and bring down the color fairly evenly. I would have been maybe helped by if I, like when I'm looking out my window right now, I can actually see across the water, I can actually see a line right here of the snow. So one thing I could do, I've got a couple things I have to do here. I have to blot out for some steam coming out of this coffee cup because I decided that's what I wanted. A little bit bigger blot, so I'm gonna come up into here. So blotting that out, and then I think I'm even gonna come in here and pull out just the suggestion. Maybe I'll come in with a bigger one. So I'm just drawing off the brush and I'm just dragging out the suggestion of a snow line over there. Drag out a little bit more right there. And then I'm gonna go ahead, I'm drying my brush, that's why it looks so weird. I'd be trying to just drag out just a hair more. Drag out a little bit there. So this dragging out technique is something you can do. You have to be prepared for it, you know, it's pulling out. Yep. Something like that. And that gives me the indication that there's some snow. It doesn't really indicate water very well, but it's kind of implied that there's some soft shapes happening over there. And I think what I'm still learning is that the more I let some of the soft beautiful shapes stay, the better it's doing. I'm a little concerned with this right here, the way it's drying. It's wanting to form something weird. So there's not much that I can do about that right at this minute. Because the more you touch it, the more it causes problems at a certain point. So this is why practicing these wet and wet backgrounds, you know, it's a good idea. And sometimes, you know, now I have the sketch. So if this background doesn't turn out the way I want it, I have this simple sketch. I can always do it again, and that will be fine, you know. So it does take practice, and sometimes the mixes do really good things together in wet and wet, and sometimes they have what we call granulation. So if one of these is a granulating color, which I didn't look up, that means that the little particles will want to separate, and that can increase the possibility of getting this sort of blossom edge. But it looks like I maybe also put a brush, you know, I did these first and then I came back into this area that way, because remember I said I was talking too much. That's right around this area that I went, ooh, I'm talking too much, I have to stop and just do it. So these wet and to wet washes, they're tough, and you know, it just takes time and practice to get the outcome that is similar to what you want, but you never really can control what the water is doing. That's part of the beauty of watercolors. You get these weird shapes. And maybe, like, in my mind, okay, well, I had an unbroken coastline that was just going softly across, right? But maybe this is going to end up looking like there's a suggestion of an outline of a bush, and then this tree's in the background, and it might be okay, you know? It might be a happy accident that might inform my painting slightly differently than I planned, but that's all right. So that's something to remember when you're working on these backgrounds like this. So this is all still way too wet to paint. I can't paint anything that overlaps with this this edge line, right? But what could I paint? Well, I want to paint this coffee cup, because that's another light piece, right? I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this tabletop. What should I do with the tabletop? We said we were doing warm, right? It could be something crazy and woven. It could be something super colorful to balance out the not so colorful. It could be something calm, like it could be just like a beautiful wood that just glows. I don't know. I think what I do want to do is make, I like blue and white pottery like this, some beautiful pottery, and so I do think that that's what I want to do for both the plate and for this mug. So in that case, we're basically working with blues, like blue grays, and blues and white. So when I think about something that will balance out blues and whites, I think of going across the color wheel. So across the color wheel from blue, you have orange. Well, that kind of leads me back to this idea of a beautiful glowing wooden table that would feel warm, cozy. And if I do that, maybe I need to think about a slightly different wood tone or something different for this background area that's like the edge of the window. Could be a darker color that just recedes, maybe. I haven't decided yet, but what I do know is I think I'm interested in mixing up the color that will work for the table. So you can do this all ahead of time, I suppose. One could do it all ahead of time, but you really don't always know what you want to mix until you get to the next stage. So that's drying. So why don't I focus on this? If you had more than one painting going, you could focus on another painting for a bit while it dries. While you think maybe there's a color you're thinking of, but you're not sure. So I think because this raw sienna is actually in the background, I think the raw sienna would be a really good choice to pull out for the table. It's a really lovely color, and I think I could just tweak it a little bit, and I could probably put some wood grain in there and it would be wonderful. So I think that's what I will do. I have a palette with just not very much left on it, sort of the theme, but I didn't wash them before we sat down. And sometimes, like I said, a little bit of something else is okay. That's not very much color. I could also wipe it out if I wanted to, but I'm kind of curious about, looks like this red is jumping into my burnt sienna. I have to be a little careful about that. Okay. Let's find our not quite. That pink has it moving far enough away that it's not quite the wood color that I was thinking. But let's see. Let me add a little bit more. And I want to do this in multiple layers. So I'm going to be initially starting with a pretty light coat of it, and it will help me figure out if that's the correct direction to go. And it will also give me a nice warm color underneath. So even if I did darken it, it will still give me a little something underneath. All right, so brushes. I'm only doing the table area, so I think probably this one will work for me. This is the 8 again. So we don't want to outline things, so you go kind of start with a blob and then kind of gradually move that over. You can see how I'm just moving the puddle. Now you can scrub on edges, especially if the color is non-staining. You can kind of scrub on an edge and get your edge back. And sometimes that gives you a nice glow, that almost like there's a little sunlight hitting the edge, but I'm going to try to do it without having to worry about that. So, and again, working fairly quickly. I'm not worrying too much about, I don't know, I lost my train of thought. just trying to focus on it, really. Almost started to outline there, and I've got to keep an eye on this other edge. I do not want this other edge to dry. Oh, not worried too much about areas where it might not be consistent, because wood grain is not, wood grain is not plastic. It would be just fine if there was some little inconsistencies in the coat. And I find, generally speaking, that you actually don't want with wood grain, if you try to make it too flat and perfect, it will not look good. You actually want to, like, leave it alone. One stroke, leave it alone, fill in. The one thing I'm trying to do is avoid any hard lines that are in, I know I'm painting it in the direction of the curve, but I'm actually sort of trying to get rid of some of the lines that reflect that. to some degree because I haven't decided which way I want my red wood grain to go. Now I can't go back in and play on top of that. It's already this, shoot, let me get this guy right here. It's already getting too dry. If I go in and try to make touches on top of this, what's going to happen? Blossomy weirdness. Okay, so leave it alone. Let it dry. Go back in once it's completely bone dry and not cold anymore to the back of your hand, and then you can work on it. Also, this is a nice light coat. I still feel capable of coming in. I don't think it's going to pick up any of that ready. I don't want any of this red ready color getting on my cup. I want my cup to be, I'm going to use some really light kind of yellowy grays to work on defining the edges of that cup and bringing some shadows. I think I'm going to have the light coming from this way, so it means this area will have some shadows in it. The handle will have some shadows, and there'll be shadows underneath the coffee cup coming this direction. And that also means there might be a little shadowing on the plate, just on this side that's behind the coffee cup. So I'm thinking about that and the light coming from this direction. I also just think that that's a nice, it just fits the composition well. You've got this line going up, you've got this line coming around here, lines going that way. So I feel like a line that comes sort of connecting. There won't be anything here, but there'll be like shadows connecting this together. I think it's a good idea. I wouldn't want the shadow to come this way because it would kind of congest everything into that corner. Although, well, I'll think about it while it's drying. I do sort of wish that maybe, like, if I thought about the piece a little more instead of sketching it out for you folks, might be interesting to include something on the windowsill, you know, to kind of pull in the actual plane of the window. Maybe doing a little, you know, shells or something sitting on the windowsill. And at this point, I think it might be too late to do anything glass. I could do something ceramic, but I don't think I want to do anything that's darker than this background color. I want the background color to be, and the colors that are on these two dishes to be the light thing that pops out. So at this point, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let this be kind of, you know, you kind of look into the distance, and this leading line that I carved out helps us track back. So it's like coming around here, your eyeball will kind of lead you back toward the focal object. Sort of like all lines lead back to the focal object. So I'm going to leave that there at this point. I'll show you this other piece I've been working on that's only partway done, that's similar. This one has a very different background, but you can see this idea of doing a blue and white and having, but it has shadows on it. It's not strictly just white, and going with a design. This one still has some more work to do to pop the shadows out in the right directions, but and the background, I have some work to do to play with that. I might actually redo it, I'm not sure yet, still playing with it, but that's the idea, is taking something like that, and for the form of the coffee cup, you really need to be working on scratch paper and line it out. Think about the composition ahead of time. But then, you know, this background part, I just want it to set the scene. I'm not trying to do a specific ridge line or anything like that. And so it depends on your preference and your subject. If you want to do coffee cup with Petersburg Mountain in the background because that's really important to you, then that's what you can do. And you use Petersburg Mountain and you get references, and then you would actually sketch out the actual mountain and put it in. But this picture for me, I think I tend to prefer to paint more reflecting on the mood and Although I can do a specific mountain, at least right now I'm enjoying experimenting a little bit with different moods and leaving some of the wet and wet areas and then having more defined areas in the front. So that's the start of this one, and I hope you enjoy a look at that process. And as we went, let me just show you our paper again. We started, remember, with an initial sketch. And so this would be something like I would it's rare for me to do all of this at once in that fashion. I typically would do the sketch and think about it and maybe even do some samples on multiple pieces of paper with different coffee cups and kind of think about it and then pull it all together in this fashion. But I do think that's very useful, and I also think that writing down notes about your ideas as you're going and what you're considering, you can always cross them out later. So the still life, we're still doing a warm feel. We decided you can always add things too, because I'm going to walk away from this now and I might forget what my choices were. So I said Delft, and I could change my mind. I can walk back to it. So Delft inspired dishes, and to me that means like a blue and white. And I can even put in the background we used, it was burnt sienna and royal blue. And then I can put that here too. And it could be more on the royal blue side maybe than but just have a touch of burnt sienna, maybe even the shadows. So just an idea, and to tie those together. And then we're going to do a wood tabletop. And I was thinking about a dark, moody wall. And then I'm going to put question marks there, my Spanish question marks, because I haven't decided in this area. I want it to tie here, not there. So it might need to be, or it might need to be another wood tone. But I'm still in my mind thinking about what I want to do, and maybe part of that will be informed by the coffee cup as I finish it and decide how bold I want the pattern to be, you know, what colors. Then I can come in here. I know that this is going to be at least a mid-tone, maybe a darker. It will definitely be darker than this. I don't know. It might end up being lighter than the tabletop. We'll see. We'll see. I'm still thinking about it. But the idea is that this coffee cup is going to be lighter than whatever this is in the background. So it's either going to be in shadow, because even a white wall goes grays in shadow. So it's either going to be like a warm gray or a wood tone, or something that's darker than the coffee cup main surface. So just an idea. And remember, I did put some points for the bottoms of trees to kind of give me an outline that was lively. I think what tends to happen is I tend to just go straight across. So I wanted to have a little bit difference, especially between sides of the trees. So I tried to make some bigger tree marks and then some little tree marks. I think it went okay. I think there's that little blossom that's right in this area. And I think if I wasn't talking, trying to do two things at once, I probably would have been able to focus on the painting a little bit more and not have that in that area. But at the same time, it might bring something really interesting. It's just suggesting some form there. So that's what we did. A little bit of an idea of how to bring some structure in and do some planning ahead. So we had our form and our idea.